any further today, I'd like to provide an update on Hurricane Michael, which made landfall along Florida's Great Panhandle. Incredible people in the Panhandle, and they went through a lot. Followed a really destructive path, then to Georgia and North and South Carolina. Our prayers are with those who lost their lives and with their families, and our hearts are with the thousands who have sustained property damage, in many cases entirely wiped out, the many families who have been displaced, and the businesses that have been affected by this devastating hurricane. All residents should heed all local warnings and instructions. My administration is in constant contact with state and local authorities in Florida, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. FEMA and first responders are on the ground, and we have teams currently conducting search and rescue missions. By the way, the Coast Guard has been incredible. They've saved many lives. Working to restore power and delivering needed supplies. We will do everything in our power to help those in need, and we will not rest or waver until the job is done and the recovery is complete. The only thing we can say about Michael with certainty is that it was so fast. It went through like a bullet, but it was a devastating bullet. It was complete. It was winds about as big as we've ever seen in history. We've never had anything like this. So I just want to thank everybody for working so hard, and for FEMA, first responders, and law enforcement. They have been
Well, joining us now by phone is Florida Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, thank you for calling in this morning. What can you tell us about what you're seeing as the sun did rise this morning and we just finally began to get a look at the actual damage and destruction to your state?
I lived through Hurricane Andrew. I was in South Florida. I've lived through multiple hurricanes, but Andrew was the one that most strikes me. And I'll never forget that day after the storm, the initial reports from the helicopters that were up in the air was, it's not too bad. And then suddenly they got to South Dade, and they're like, oh, my goodness. And that, again, I mean, we're still early. We're learning more, but that's the kind of news that I'm getting from people on the ground. The initial reports are maybe we dodged a bullet, but then as the sun has come up and people started to look at some of this devastation. Panama City, the electric grid isn't just damaged, it's shredded, and so it'll have to be rebuilt, not just restored. And somebody told me point blank, talked to them last night and again this morning, they said, you know, Mexico Beach, it's gone. I mean, that's a charming old Florida town. And I think the biggest fear here, of course, this is going to be an incredible challenge for months to come. Federal government's going to have to step up and really be helpful. But this is the kind of event that could change the characteristic of a community. I mean, fundamentally change it and take a decade to recover if it's not done appropriately. So I think this just turned out to be as bad as we thought it was going to be, and potentially worse. We'll learn more throughout the day. And what we know for sure is there's a lot of lives right now that have been disrupted in ways that are going to be very difficult to rebuild, and we have a lot of work ahead. I'm headed to the FEMA headquarters in a few minutes, and then I'll be headed to Northwest Florida. And obviously, I hope my early assessment is wrong. I fear I'm not.
We're looking at video while you're speaking, Senator Rubio, and it is just awful, some of these pictures, down to obviously the downed electrical lines and trees causing a lot of damage, and still poses a threat to those in the area. What are you asking for? What does your state need as in terms of federal resources?
Well, I think it's going to need a little bit of everything. I know, and I've been updating people on Twitter about sort of the federal resources that are on standby, what the Department of Defense is prepared to offer, and so forth. But right now, I think we're still in the search and rescue operation mission, and I think you're going to see more federal assets deployed in that effort to sort of identify, are there people trapped under some of this, are there lives that have been lost? And then the hard work begins. People talk about restoring power. Without power, you have no cell phone towers. You have no ability to sustain life over periods of time. You can't restore power into lines that are on the ground and feeding into water or other places. The minute you turn that power on, you could kill someone, you could start a fire, all kinds of things happen. This is a very complicated thing that lies ahead, because it's not just a hurricane, it's the water damage left behind. You could have homes that are intact, they look intact, but the water damage is going to force that home to be demolished. But I think initially from the federal government, what we're going to need is additional resources for search and rescue, and we're going to have a massive housing problem here. I mean, we're going to have to shelter thousands of people for extended periods of time who are not going to be able to return to their homes. Even if the homes weren't damaged, they will not be able to return to those homes because of down power lines or obstructions in the road. And so the biggest challenge is going to be sort of where do we house people that are going to have no place to live here for the foreseeable future. And it's one of the things I'm going to press on when I go to FEMA here in a few minutes after they're done with their briefing.
And obviously, the immediate economic toll will be the headline, in addition to the loss of life that's already been experienced. But then looking out, considering the tourist destination that so many of these cities and towns in Florida are, the long-term effects, I'm sure, will be a big discussion for you this morning.
This was someone's house. Now, following this destructive power of Hurricane Michael, what we have here is an empty slab foundation for a house. And looking around Mexico Beach, frankly, I can't count the number of houses that have been ripped right down to the foundation or ripped off of their foundation. And that brings up a point. The destructive power of this hurricane looks a lot like what we usually see with a tornado, but a tornado is very focused in its intensity and the amount of ground it covers. And what we're seeing with this hurricane is the destruction just stretches for miles and miles. And the destruction, of course, is plain to see here in Mexico Beach. What is unknown right now is the human toll. The mayor here tells me that some 280 people plus elected to ride out the storm in their homes. And right now, there's no way to communicate with these people. There's no way to account for them. So search and rescue is underway. The other big job right now is clearing the roadways to make that search and rescue possible. But there's a tremendous amount of debris in the roadway. Again, very, very powerful storm that came ashore. One of the things that we noticed driving in, usually with a hurricane, you see the ground gets soft and trees get tipped over because their roots can't hold them up anymore. What we saw driving in here was just miles and miles of trees that were snapped off at the trunk. A powerful demonstration of just how much force this hurricane brought ashore. The other ubiquitous sight, Shep, are these power lines that are down in the roadway. This is all over this this section of the Panhandle. We drove in on I-10. We saw hundreds and hundreds of power trucks that were staging. They had come in from out of state, but it's just going to take them a while to get these power lines back up and working and get power restored. And it's unfortunate for those people, but as you heard it from the leaders out here, they're just going to have to be patient.
Very quickly, Mike, I-10 had been closed about 50 miles of it. I should say 80 miles of it. Do we know, so they can clean out debris? Do we know if it's reopened?
It looked like they were making some progress. To be honest with you, I saw it in the early morning hours when it was closed and we had to come over to the local roads, and I haven't had an opportunity to go back and look at it. But what you have is an overwhelming amount of debris in the roadways, and it's going to take a while.
And that's so far north of the beach, too.
Downgraded
Mike
to a
Tobin,
tropical
thanks.
storm after leaving a trail of catastrophic damage up and down the Florida coast. In Panama City, residents waking up to destroyed buildings, downed trees, heavy flooding. Jeff Flock is live in Panama City Beach right now. He has the very latest. Jeff, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Maria. Most powerful storm to hit the U.S. anywhere since Andrew in 1992. But I think the headline is that the positive news is that it didn't hit a huge population center. The damage, though, undeniable across the Panhandle. Take a look at a picture from Panama City, middle school with its roof completely torn off. That characteristic of the damage there. But the worst of the damage, even east of there in a small town called Mexico Beach with only about 1,000 residents. Bad for them, but fortunately it didn't hit, as we said, a larger population center. As you point out, still a storm, still a tropical storm, but moving very rapidly. That also helped, unlike Hurricane Florence or Irma last year that moved so slowly. It's dark now, but the FEMA director, Brock Long, talking about what he thinks we'll see when the sun comes up.
Here again, we're going to see a lot of devastation along the coast structurally, and then as it moves in, you're going to see power outages throughout the state. And then unfortunately, you're going to see rainfall into South Carolina and North Carolina.
And so we'll assess the damage out here, Maria. I think, you know, as powerful as that storm was, fortunately, the worst of it concentrated in a small area that did not hit a huge population center. That's not going to make it any easier for the folks that have to recover from this, but a positive nonetheless.
Wow, those pictures were so devastating, Jeff. Some of the destruction that we saw right outside of a school. People looking out from the gym, the destruction right outside of that school was just incredible. Amazing what weather can do.
Very powerful storm.
Very powerful. Jeff, thank you very much. And and as I mentioned, this is the gym of a school right where Jeff is, Panama City, looking out onto the destruction outside with trees down and obviously power down.
I thank you. God bless you, and may he continue to bless the nation that has showered this land with love for more than 2 centuries. Thank you all. God bless you all.